Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Hiba Weber. It's so nice to have you on the show, Hiba. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share with us. And you actually started not one, but two businesses. Hiba, you're the CEO and co-founder of SellerMobile, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Sure. Well, thank you, Desiree, for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So SellerMobile is a dashboard for Amazon, Walmart, so e-commerce sellers. What we do is we make running your business sort of as simplified and streamlined as possible. But my journey there's so many, I sort of can't see my journey as being linear at all, because I feel like there's so many starts and stops, but the one that kind of naturally led to this SaaS business, SaaS stands for software as a subscription, was really the e-commerce business that I was part of before that. And so it was about a 15-year journey. We started with, out of college, we met a friend, when I say we, I mean my brother and I and another friend. We knew someone who was selling online, and we said, well, that sounds exciting and fun. We'll try it. It'll be an adventure. I feel like when you're young, you're really willing to take risks and put in a lot of hours and a lot of effort to create something from nothing. And that really is what it was. And as that brand grew, we learned business along the way. At some point, and I feel like anyone that's been doing something for about 10 or 15 years, they're sort of a little bit reflective on, what is it that they're finding the most joy in? And for us, or for me specifically, really what that was, the technology that we were creating as we were scaling our business. And so, when there isn't a solution out there, most entrepreneurs will go out, or most people in general, right, that are sort of drawn to creating something out of nothing, they'll create a solution to a problem that they are facing in that moment. And for us, it was really kind of streamlining our business and being more technology forward. And so we created this thing, turned out to be a software that we could sell to other people also, but to really solve our own problems. I sort of, when you day to day, you're organically, you're drawn to doing things that are part of your job, sort of more so than other things that you have to do. It came to a point that building that software and that technology was just really interesting. So my brother and I and our partner, we decided, hey, now is the time. It's a great time to exit. Because why not? It just seemed like something exciting to do, honestly. So we exited the e-commerce business. And then I took on the role of really continuing to build out the software. And I found so much value and joy in it that I wanted to share this with other entrepreneurs and other sort of small to medium-sized businesses that didn't need to go out and find a developer and do all of this grunt work, that we could provide a solution to their problems.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. And you know what? You brought up a good point, is that people will often create their own solutions to the problems that they have, right? And that is really the sole thing with creators. Yeah. They see a need, they fill the need. And that's how so many products have come to life, right? Just physical products, software, you name it.
Absolutely. I was just reading this book, and I hate saying the name of the book and not remembering the author, but it's called Innovation Stack. And it was talking about, and it's a great, great, great book. And it was talking about Square, the company Square, and sort of how it came about. And it was such a disruptor in this payment processing space. And it came out of not because they wanted to sort of do something that was groundbreaking, but they really wanted to solve a problem. And I feel like that's really what entrepreneurship is. At its essence, you're wanting to solve a problem, and you are just able to see it differently, maybe than everyone else. And that to me is just a very exciting thing to experience.
For sure. So did you actually create the software yourself?
So I am not a developer. So I don't actually write code. I know enough to be like slightly dangerous, but beyond that, I cannot. But what I have is an amazing team. So our CTO has a team of developers, and he really is sort of the person that we go to saying, hey, I want to solve this business problem. And what he's able to do is he'll sort of use his genius brain and write code and create a solution to the problem that I'm trying to solve. And because I've been on the end of the person who had the problem, it's really easy for me to kind of look at a business dashboard and say, hey, look, I need this metric. It's really important for me to be able to make this decision about inventory or pricing or adding new products to my catalog, whatever that may be. And then I can kind of give that information to the developers, and they're able to solve that problem. So it sort of works out beautifully.
So kind of like a partnership there, right? You're giving them the feedback that they need, and he's solving it for you. And so kind of evolved out of your initial e-commerce business. How did that start? You said it was just like you guys said, hey, let's just start selling some products. Was there anything else that led up to it, or just let's just do this for fun was kind of what initiated it?
Yeah, so it was really a friend who had been in the e-commerce space. And I often find that when you surround yourself with people that are really interesting, that are doing things, out of the ordinary, you're just sort of drawn to doing similar things. So, I have friends that after college took very traditional routes and went and got a job, and what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to get that 9-to-5 job. You're supposed to, kind of go into maybe corporate America or whatever the case may be a doctor, a lawyer, just sort of like traditional, like immigrant jobs, or children of immigrants jobs, right? And because we knew this person who was who had just found a lot of success, and we were just curious. And I feel like a lot of great conversations just come from well, that sounds kind of interesting. I wonder if I should try that. For me, it sort of went one step beyond that. So my brother had already started this. After college, I was like, I wanted to get out of Dodge. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to just travel. And so the easiest way for me to do that at the time, I had no money, was to join the Peace Corps. So I did. After college, I joined the Peace Corps, and I lived in a country called Azerbaijan. I had never heard of it, but it opened my eyes to sort of just this tremendous world out there. I have always enjoyed traveling. And so it was just this really great opportunity for me to have. And what kind of the core of it, one of the things that they say about the Peace Corps is, it's the hardest job you'll ever love. And I feel like that's really entrepreneurship, is you are just constantly fighting fires and solving problems. And it almost seems like the minute you solve a problem, another one comes about. And I feel like the skills that to kind of persevere through problem solving really come from these outside experiences. It's not something you learn in college. It's not something that you learn in a textbook, but it is really, you learn it by doing. And for me, I feel like Peace Corps was a huge part of that, because there were constant problems. And so, but I think that people that persevere through that, part of it is they're just really passionate and they care. And then the other part of it is they don't give up. That experience kind of really perfectly set me up for this entrepreneur journey that I kind of took on after that. And it wasn't even something that I thought much about. You just start doing it and you're like, I love it. I love every single minute of it. Even the crummiest days where everything seems like it's falling apart, you still get some, joy out of it. And I think that is really key.
Yeah, when you start your own business, it's like your baby. And even though there are those really challenging days, you still love that baby. Oh. And, you're going to fight through whatever it is to have it be successful, just like with our own children. We want to just help them along and keep them going, and we'll do whatever it takes.
Absolutely. 100%. I think that really is a great way to look at it, is that it's like it's personified as this like thing that you want to take care of and you want to see it, grow and thrive. And I think comparing it to like a parent is just so appropriate.
Speaking of children, you actually have a couple of children, but before we get to that, you had told me before that when you were in the Peace Corps, that's how you met your husband. If you want to just maybe share a little bit about how because that was a really great story, which I loved. So if you don't mind sharing that.
Sure. So I met my husband while I was in the Peace Corps. He's not American. He's actually German. It was just one of those very, very fluke, just sort of encounters in life. And then we look back 13 years later, and the life that we've created together is just really beautiful. So we met in the Peace Corps. Our first date was actually in Paris, France, because we said, why not? It'll be fun. And so we met, and then, it was a lot of back and forth. And one of the things that I really love about my husband and our courtship at the beginning was we explored the world together. And that part of like always wanting to do something new and try something new has just always been a very kind of big part of my journey. We lived in Germany for a little while. Now we're back in Texas where my family is, and we've got two wonderfully, exhausting children that are just full of energy. And then they're like they're 3 and 5. And so been in so many different fronts of my life. I've just always found there's so many learning experiences, and I take experiences from one area and apply it to the other. And I'm really lucky that it's worked out so wonderfully.
And we talked before a little bit about that kind of work-life balance. And that's something that, as a working mother, you are trying to balance that. I'm running a company and I have children. And you said something to me, and it was not necessarily work-life balance, but like a work-life integration. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, actually, I'd heard this concept from a friend of mine who helps really women entrepreneurs. And she talks about this a lot, and it just really resonated with me. It's really hard to strike a balance, because when you're trying to find that perfect balance, you often feel like no side is happy and you feel really burnt out because you're constantly trying to strike a balance, as opposed to a work-life integration. So I'll give you a short example of kind of what that looks like for me in my personal life. In the summers, we go and live in Germany with my husband's parents, and we spend like 2 months there. When we do that, I don't necessarily take off work. That's obviously not a thing. I can't be away from my business for 2 months, but we put the children in school there so they can have this wonderful experience while I'm working, from home. And so what we do is really we find that integration of what that looks like, where we're having an enjoyable summer. I'm doing something really fun and exciting, but I'm still able to get all the other things done. Or it might be that, last week, one of the kids was sick. And so I had to, get them from school early, and that ruined, a couple of meetings that I had planned. But that meant the next day I had to catch up and do all of these other things while my parents helped out or my husband helped out. And I think it's constantly finding that there's times in your life where you're going to be really focused on your business. And then there's times in your life where you're going to be focused on your family or your significant other or your parents or whoever that is. And I think that we just need to be graceful with ourselves, and we need to give ourselves sort of that, it's okay. If this is what I have to do in this moment, I'm going to be here present for this person or this thing or my job or whatever the case may be. But I will find pockets in my life where I make sure that I am being 100% attentive to that thing or that person that I need to. And I think that's really the key. The key is never to feel like I'm not here or there, but when I'm doing this thing, when I'm having this conversation with Desiree, I'm not thinking about all of these other things. I'm really in the moment here and available to the person that I'm talking to or the project that I'm working on. For me, I just feel like it works out really nicely when you give yourself the opportunity to be present and never like say, well, I'm like missing out on this other thing because I'm doing this thing right now.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's such great information to remind ourselves, let's be present in this moment, whatever it is that we're doing, and let everything else just go for the moment, and we'll get to that later, right?
Exactly. Because
That's awesome.
everything gets its turn, right? You'll get
Right.
to it. Like you're not gonna, or it wasn't so important that you didn't need to do it. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Tell us a little bit about, do you have like a practice, sort of a reflective practice where you're working on, reflecting on the things that you're doing or the things that you want to do?
Yes, I used to put a lot of like emphasis on like, I need to wake up early and I need to do like meditation and yoga and I need to sort of journal and I need to do all of these things. And it always felt like there was so much pressure to do all of that. And I inevitably just like, I dropped the ball on it inevitably because it was just too much. And so what I have now is something just really, really, really simple is I have a list and I prioritize 3 things. That's it. Just 3 things that I absolutely have to do that day. And I can't leave without doing those 3 things. So what it forces me to do is all of the little BS things that are just sort of time killers. I'm not going to put that on the list because I know that that's not really going to make an impact. Anything that I think is going to move the needle for my business or for my family or for whatever that is. So I write those things down and I can't go to bed unless I do them. And then I used to do this thing where I used to write things that I was grateful for. Again, that work-life integration, right? That whatever that means. We actually made that a family activity. So we have a journal and every night we sit and like all of us, the 3-year-old, the 5-year-old, my husband, myself, we will just say like one thing we're grateful for that day. So for me, it's I'm practicing gratitude but not just that, but I'm actually like instilling this in these young children. And so what you will find so surprising is I inevitably will drop the ball and forget that this is something we do. But the 3-year-old said, well, I want to tell you what I'm grateful for today. And we can't go to bed just yet. And so really it's like creating this environment where like now there are people in my family that are holding me accountable to doing this thing that I, suggested we do in the first place. And so those are kind of the 2 pieces that we do. So I personally, 3 things I have to accomplish. These are needle movers. These are really important pieces. And then as a family, we have this gratitude journal. And I'm just excited for years to come. We'll be able to look back and then kind of see not just what I was grateful for that day, but what, our entire family was grateful for.
I love that. That's so fantastic. And that you're right. You're setting the tone for your children and realizing what's important and what they're thankful for. That's such a precious thing that when they get older to look back on their, little 3-year-old and 5-year-old selves, what it was that they were thankful for, that's going to be such a fantastic thing for them to do, to look back on that. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your journey. Were there any setbacks or anything that you kind of encountered that was really challenging that you had to struggle through or maybe had to change course? If there was, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. It's really interesting because when you're in the thick of it and in that moment, you think you're just so like caught up in it that it's even sometimes hard for me to see. So one of the things is really interesting about me, and maybe it's a personal thing, is like I have a really hard time quitting. Like I just like I don't, and that's something that we practice as a family. Like we don't quit, but not just that. We are always kind of striving towards doing like the most challenging things. So if I feel like things don't seem challenging, they sort of don't seem worthwhile, which I don't know, maybe something I have to unpack later in therapy. But that sort of drives me, like doing like a really hard thing drives me. So I'll kind of talk about SellerMobile right now, because that's sort of the thing that's the thing that I spend, a majority of my time thinking about and talking about and working on. I didn't know what I didn't even know what SaaS was. Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know. And the software that we could create it, I just thought, I don't know, somebody in San Francisco, these tech companies, they do that thing, like not me, like that couldn't be something I could do. But going into it, like, understanding churn and understanding like monthly recurring revenue and what that means and how to create a business model that was outside of what we were doing before, which was selling products. Like I understood how to sell products and create listings and having images and having all of this. And it was just, it seemed so clear. And so when we first started, SellerMobile sort of took off, but then it very much stagnated. Our growth stagnated. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I was like, I just genuinely don't know what to do. How do you solve this problem? And so I think through it all, what was really important for me, and the thing that I will sort of encourage anyone is when you're going through something challenging in your business or even your personal life, is it's really easy to sort of just turtle and just like go within yourselves and blame yourself and think, well, I can't figure this out. This is too complicated. This is too hard. The thing that kind of helped me not do that was to go out and meet as many people as I could, and to go out and find people who had done this or who were maybe a few years, ahead of me, who had, solved this problem. And it wasn't that these people were necessarily telling me what to do, but even them sharing their experiences of how they were able to overcome challenges, it gave me a lot of inspiration to keep working at it and keep kind of figuring out new things. Really, the biggest piece of any time when I felt kind of stuck doing something is I've always thought, now is the time for me to go out, and now is the time for me to like try the thing that seems kind of really hard to do. The other piece of advice I will give that I never thought much about, but has been just really kind of an important piece of finding success in so many things, was I never waited for things to be perfect. And that like is really like forcing me to like challenge myself. Is oftentimes we find that we get stuck because we want like a website launch or a blog article or a podcast or anything to be perfect. Like you're like, I want to start off. And when I start off, I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. And if I can't do X, Y, Z, I can't do this. That is such a detriment to success. Because there's another book that I am sure that you've read it too. It's The Lean Startup, and it talks about MVP, most viable product. Oftentimes, companies will not succeed because they're trying to make this like perfect product. But really, what you need to create is the most viable product, the product that you can launch tomorrow, the product that you can, or the whatever the solution that you can create most easily without the least amount of friction. And so I think the two pieces that I have found that have really helped me is, one, go out, be around people that are really successful and are solving problems, and learn from them. And two, don't try to be a perfectionist. I don't know why society in some ways has really glorified perfectionism when it's really a detriment to like success and growth. Get something out there, because you're not going to be able to iterate on it and improve it until you get feedback from the outside world of how that product is. And you won't get feedback unless you put something out there. And so get out of your head and really just go out there and do it and try and fall a few times, because that's the best way to learn.
Totally right on that. Is we can't learn unless we make some mistakes, right? That's where we can make those minor changes or major changes that suddenly this thing will become a success. And it would never have been there or gotten to that point if we didn't just put something out there and see what happened. And you're absolutely right with, a product, with a service, with a podcast, with, whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you don't put something out there, you're never going to learn, you're never going to grow, you're not going to be able to make these changes. So make it even better. That's absolutely right on. Thank you for sharing that. And the book too. So I'll add that to the show notes. So speaking of books, Is there any other books or podcasts that you're listening to right now, or books that you've read, in the past that you want to share with the listeners that you think would be beneficial?
Yeah, so I mentioned a few just sort of in conversation. So the Lean Startup is a great one. Innovation Stack, I just finished listening to it. I don't know, I think I'd mentioned one other, but Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I love that book. It's like one I reread because it's so important to remember your why and why you're doing things, and just because it continues to motivate you when you feel demotivated or you feel you're stagnated. So that's a great one. Think of a podcast. Yours is probably, I'm going to start listening to this one once you've got a few episodes out. There's another one that's really good. The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Howard Horowitz. And it's a great book. It talks about just so many different things, because even, in this sort of economic downturn where people are just uncertain what's going on with their business, revenues aren't what they used to be, and things. And they talk about there's a wartime CEO and a peacetime CEO. And he does this great thing talking about kind of what really you need to be, what kind of hat you need to put on as a leader, depending on what's going on, either in sort of an economy in general or in your business specifically, because there isn't a one size fits all. You need to change as a leader to solve the problems that are in front of you. And so that's another great book that I really enjoy.
Excellent. That's a good one. All right. So we'll add that as well. Well, thank you so much, Hiba, for sharing your time and your stories and your knowledge. One last thing is you mentioned early on about exiting your e-commerce business. If you wouldn't mind sharing, what was that like? Was it a quick process? Was it a long process? What do you want to tell us about that?
From the inception of the thought of hey, is this something that, because that's the other thing, is there never seems like a perfect time. There's never just like the launch that we were talking about, there's never a perfect time. You can always sort of think back and say, oh, well, I could continue to grow this, or maybe my multiples will increase if I do this or that. I think the key there is to, and this is kind of when I talk about quitting versus pivoting. I don't believe in quitting. You can't get me to quit something. However, pivoting is super important. And so you have to find for yourself, are you leaving this because you're more excited about something else and there's something else you want to try and grow on and an experience, or are you leaving because this is really hard and I just don't want to do it anymore? And so I can't imagine ever in my 80s to even be someone who will just sort of exit a company and just sit at the beach and hang out. That doesn't seem that sounds like a horrible thing for me. And so, because then I love feeling passionate about something. And I feel if I don't, I don't know, there doesn't seem a lot of joy in just doing the same thing every day. So because I knew that I wanted to try software and see what that journey would be like. I'm still really young. I'm 36 years old. I want to, this is the time to try new things. And so who knows what the next thing is going to be, but right now I'm really, really enjoying this. So I don't see myself pivoting. So that was it was really important to me that I was going towards something and not leaving something just to leave it. So I don't know, the whole thing was probably maybe 2 years from inception to exit. Also, it's very different today. Exiting an e-commerce business is not what it was in 2019 even, which is when we exited. But I think building something, learning from it, and then applying that same knowledge to something slightly bigger, to me is key. So that's that. That would be the only advice I could think of to share about an exit.
Well, thank you for telling us that story, your thought process on exiting that business. And that is a great way to think about it, is being excited about doing something else that you're ready to let that previous thing go. That's great advice.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
And get some money along the way.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, Hiba. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and information with us. It's so wonderful, and I do appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you, Desiree.